I remember when I was 17, I came home from school, had a good amount of homework, I felt relatively overwhelmed, and I probably should have been doing my homework, but there wasn't any deadline. So what I ended up doing was I actually went to YouTube and I went down a rabbit hole of recommended videos for about an hour and a half. And one of the videos that I came across was titled, How to Start an Online Business with $0 Down. It was about 8 minutes long. I figured it was more likely than not a scam. However, I was bored and intrigued at the same time, so I figured, worst case scenario, I lose 8 minutes of my life and life goes on. However, that video changed my life. That video talked about how to start an e-commerce store and what's also known as drop shipping. And that video itself led me to start my first business, which was Modern Dream Room. So Modern Dream Room was a e-commerce company for primarily girls ages 16 to 23 that sold room decor items such as tapestries, salt lamps, etc. And it is safe to say that it was an utter failure. I mean, if you look at the logo, like who's kidding who, it wasn't getting very far, let's be honest here. So that company, my only sale was actually my mother, which you can see right here. So I had one sale, and I lost a lot more money than I made, that's for sure. So, however, I caught the entrepreneurial bug, and I found that there was something different out there, another path. And if you fast forward 3 months, I started the empathy firm. And if you fast forward about 3.5 years, we're now on pace to do more than 7 figures this year. So we went from doing less than $10 to now over 7 figures in a year. And I asked myself when I was getting ready for this, what was the difference? And the difference to me was getting mentorship from people who were much further along in their journey than I was, 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs. But how did I do that? It all was by making just one connection. I want to share exactly with you today how I made that connection and how anyone in this room could do the exact same thing. So, right there, the girl holding the dog, that is my old business teacher, Miss Iverson. And next to her is her husband. And one day, I was in personal finance class in business, and I remember Miss Iverson told me about this college student that her husband had met, and his name was Apple. Fun name. And Apple, he had a podcast that had hundreds of thousands of downloads. He also had a business that was doing very well at the time, especially considering he was attending university at the same time at this point. And I was pretty intrigued, and we actually played one of his YouTube videos in our class as well. And as you can see, his channel, and we learned a lot about personal finance just by watching this guy's YouTube. And I was like, you know what, I'm weird, he's weird, let me reach out, let me get connected with Apple, because he's another young person doing different things, and I figured that it'd be worthwhile. So I sent Apple a DM on Instagram, and all I did at the time, I had my toes in the water with business, so I knew a little bit about what I was doing, and I was growing Instagram accounts for people at the time, and I offered, hey, I can show you how I'm doing this or do it for you, I'd love to connect. Right? And that's actually a really interesting lesson in and of itself. Instead of just asking, can I pick your brain, or doing something that's so one-sided, I led with value to make it a mutually beneficial meetup. And we actually ended up meeting a few months later, and we became friends, and he helped me with something that significantly changed the course of my life and business. And that was my podcast. So Apple's is there on the left, mine is on the right from my point of view, switched around. But essentially, my podcast, what it allowed me to do was interview 8, 7, 9-figure entrepreneurs who were much further along in their journey than I was, and people who had industry-specific knowledge that I was trying to learn, people that would charge thousands of dollars for an hour of consulting, I could talk with for free for 30 to 60 minutes. And on top of that, I could build a relationship and then do business with some of them on the back end. So this podcast really changed the game for me, and I started to realize how powerful this could be. And it led to me obtaining mentorship in my life that I never really thought was possible at that point in my life, because I started my podcast right after high school. And Brett Knutson, Jeff Fenster, these are both two people who have been very influential in my life. And even part of the reason why I physically moved from a small town of 6,000 people in Wisconsin to Las Vegas, Nevada, is because of Brett there. He changed my life significantly, and it was all because I interviewed him on a podcast and built the relationship on the back end afterwards. And it's safe to say that my learning curve, compared to the average, was significantly shortened. And one thing is, if you're sitting here and you know that you may be content with your life, you may want more, whatever it is, if you want to change your life, you have to change your environment. There's a quote from Gandhi that I love that goes, your beliefs affect your thoughts affect your words affect your actions form your habits, and your habits form your reality. So if that is true, then the question is, how do we believe better? How do we change our beliefs to benefit us? And the answer to that is you need to change your environment. What surrounds you, you will start to become. And you can change your physical and digital environments. And I started with digital with the podcast, and I recommend anybody who's wanting to change their life or accomplish a goal that's ambitious to do the same. And I did it through podcasting. So what I want to dive into now is showing you guys tactically how you can start your own podcast to build these connections to make the difference in your environment, therefore forwarding the quality of your life and achieving the goals that you may have. So, number one, the basics of starting a podcast are pretty easy. Stuff like getting a name, making a cover art. You can easily look it up on YouTube. That's how I learned a ton of this stuff starting out. But the goal here is to leverage those resources so that way you can talk to people who individually know how to accomplish the goals that you're setting out to accomplish. If you don't know exactly what that is yet, it's still great to be exposed to all those different ideas. And I promise you that knowing people who a lot of times are of high integrity and high value is not going to hurt you along your journey in figuring that out. So really, all you need is Zoom, which is free. And I did all my interviews on Zoom, by the way. A webcam, that one cost about $60. It's actually the exact webcam that I used for a long time. Microphone, about $100. And Descript, which is the editing software that is really great. That's only about $30 a month. So for less than $200, this is all possible to everyone in this room. Less than $200. Some people spend a lot more on that just in entertainment in a month alone. Some people, of course, across a year. So you can make it happen if you're hungry enough to do so. So one of the biggest things, and this is one of the biggest strategic tips that I can give to you guys, is one of the reasons why I had so much success with the podcast in a short amount of time with getting really great guests on the show is because my outreach was very unique and it broke patterns. People who you want to get in touch with, they're always being hit up typically. And they get a lot of emails, a lot of texts, a lot of LinkedIn messages, Instagram DMs, whatever it is, and they see when they open their inbox, when they open their messages, text. So what I did was I would send videos. That already breaks the pattern. And then on top of that, I would make sure that it was personalized so they knew right away when they opened it that it was for them, saying, hey, Brett, or whoever it was that I was reaching out to. So an example of what this would sound like would be, hey, Brett, it's Gavin here, and I'm the host of the Future Millionaires podcast, which is a podcast that centers around helping young individuals develop in their business and personal lives. With that being said, I heard about you on, and I also love what you shared about, and I'd love to have you on the show. If you're interested, just let me know. Either way, have an amazing day, Brett. So you can tell that that's personalized and it has good energy. And the other thing I would do once I got a bit more established in the space is I would look beforehand to see who they're following on either LinkedIn, who they're connected with on Facebook, who they're following on Instagram that I've already interviewed. And I would tag 3 people right in the beginning of the video, as you can see, that I interviewed, which overcame a lot of the objections of how many downloads does your podcast have, how many episodes, because they're like, oh, my friends are going on the show. People I already know, like, and trust are going on this show. Well, it must be a pretty good show, and yeah, I'll come on too. I like your energy, Gavin. I can tell you put a personalized effort towards reaching out with this. So when you're conducting the interview, be curious. The reality is, I didn't spend a whole lot of time prepping for a lot of interviews. I learned the basics about the person. I want to approach it with a very curious mindset. So that's a beautiful part of this, is that you do not have to put in a ton of effort to do that as well. You just have to be genuinely curious and ask the questions and get deep on information. And if you're having fun and you're learning, then the audience that you're building is also going to be learning and having fun as well. So on the back end of the show, after you build 30 to 60 minutes of rapport, afterwards there may be a 5 to 10 minute slot where you have an opportunity to forward that relationship and solidify it and build it in a way that is going to be meaningful moving forward. There's a lot of different ways to do this, and there's plenty of tactics, but for today I want to share one that anyone in this room can do. And there's a website called Medium. And Medium, you can actually create an account for free and become a writer on the site. And within that, you could create a template for anybody who comes on your show that you could essentially replace some variables and publish an article for them about their company or the podcast itself on Medium. And afterwards, when you talk, you say, hey, Brett, or whoever it is, hey, Brett, it was a really amazing show. I loved having you on. I actually was wondering if it'd be good with you. I wanted to take this a step further and help you and your company out because I really appreciate the time you showed me, and I'd love to reciprocate that. I actually write for a few publications, and one of them, I was wondering if you'd be good with me writing a story about your business. Whatever it is, that's going to forward that relationship, and if you haven't asked, they're much more likely to reciprocate, or even more so, you're just investing in the relationship capital with that person, which you can use to build, which can pay off big time down the line, especially if one of these people ends up mentoring you. It can legitimately change your life. The reality is that when I started in podcasting, it used to cost me a decent amount per episode to pay somebody to edit everything. Now you can accomplish all that with $30 a month with Descript, which is amazing. I don't have any affiliation with them. I just really love their service, and it's something that I would recommend. And then when you're distributing your podcast as well, keep it simple. Anchor.fm is a great option, and you can also upload it to YouTube, because I'd recommend recording both audio and video. And one of the best things that you can do is, as you start to interview all these amazing people, you're going to realize that person A and person B may actually be able to help each other. I know this person had this problem, and this person could potentially solve that problem. And when there are mutually beneficial relationships and introductions that you can make, making those builds up relationship capital with your audience and the people that you're interviewing, and it allows you to further those relationships without doing much work and doing something very valuable. And the correct introduction can result in a large monetary gain for some of these people. So it can be extremely valuable. It can solve a lot of problems for them. So after you build all this digital proximity and start to change your environment, nothing at the end of the day beats in person. And a lot of these people, they didn't become close mentors of mine until I actually met them in person somewhere. But it all started on the podcast. That's the door that opened for me, but it's your opportunity to step through it and do what the other people won't do. At the end of the day, if you want to get results that 1% of people have, you have to be willing to do what 99% of people just aren't willing to do. So go take the plane trip, find a way to get the money, go to the event, meet more people, shake their hands in person, and it'll change a lot of stuff. And that's also a picture of Vegas, which, like I said, I moved to from Wisconsin literally primarily for this exact reason. And that's my friend Dennis, who I met first online, built that digital proximity, and now we're great friends, and it's really been beneficial knowing each other through that. I've received a lot of mentorship from him as well. So the last step that I want to say here is Abe Lincoln has a quote that I love, and it's, if he had 5 hours to chop down a tree, he said that he would spend the first 3 sharpening his axe. For you, and as you go on this journey of either starting your podcast or just wanting to build your relationships, to accomplish goals and whatever it may be, and build that one connection that's going to change your life, over time, if you can be building up your own brand, you make the offer more enticing to be introduced to somebody else. Because let's say you meet person A, and they know a whole bunch of people that you want to be introduced to. If you can build up your brand and make it more enticing for you to get introduced to that person, say, hey, this is Gavin, he's done X, Y, and Z. They're like, oh, that's pretty cool, I'd love to talk with him. That's going to benefit you a ton and help you also get better guests on the podcast. So at the end of the day, it's important to realize that I hear this so much, how social media is negative, and there's definitely negative aspects of it. And what is still true with that is if it uses you, it will be negative in your life. You need to use it. This provides one of the most, it's crazy, when you look at all of human history, there's never been an opportunity like this, especially for people of any age, to go and start connecting and forming what they want to do with their lives at such an early age and be able to forward themselves this way has never been possible in all of human history. So at the end of the day, if you use social media instead of letting it use you, and you can create these relationships that last, you will change your environment, which will change your beliefs, which will change your life, and it only takes one connection. Thank you.